Welcome back to the Papa Schro Knows podcast. We got EDJ back in the building this week, and it's been a couple of weeks, so we got a lot to talk about. How you doing, EDJ?
I'm doing definitely the dog days of baseball.
Yes, sir.
We'll get into all that, talk a little bit about the Chiefs' preseason, and lots of stuff to talk about. Like you said, it's been a little bit, so let's dig right into it.
Yeah, how good is this Chiefs offensive line going to be in 2025? I think is what a lot of people have been thinking about. Obviously, very relevant after the Super Bowl loss that we have talked about long enough. Football is finally back.
Yeah.
And so we talked before we started recording, but how about Josh Simmons? I mean, he looked pretty good.
He looks really good. He looked so good that I forgot he was out there. And I think that's about as good as you can be for a debut for a rookie if you don't even realize that he's out there. So, he looked so super strong. I think he took on a couple of double edge blitzes at one point. He just looked solid. I mean, it truly looked like he knew what he was doing, grasped the offense right away. There's obviously it's the first preseason game against the year against the Cardinals team that does not look very good. He just looked super solid. I was very pleased with what I saw. Defensively, the first strings looked really good. They didn't have a lot of trouble. Obviously Patrick got one throw in, but it was a touchdown because of that fumble on the opening kickoff. How about special teams forcing two fumbles?
Yeah.
I think on the first two kickoffs or close to it. So a great defensive game. Obviously they lost by 3, but once you get in those third and fourth strings, I'm not really even paying attention anymore because those guys may not even be on the roster or play. So, it was encouraging. Saw a lot of good things. Brownlee looked really good with that back shoulder grab that he had to go up in the air for. So a lot of positive notes coming out of Arizona.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think Jason Brownlee was, I thought, let me see how I want to say this. I really liked how they did this, and I mentioned in the offensive film breakdown of going with Tyquan Thornton out there, going with Jason Brownlee on that last play, because they kept the same personnel group out there for the first couple of plays, and they swapped out Worthy for Brownlee on that play. And to see Brownlee make that play, and then later in the game, Jalen Royals wasn't able to make the same play, and that's no knock on Jalen Royals at all. Just for, I thought it was, just to show that, hey, there's some depth at wide receiver, I think, right now for the Kansas City Chiefs, and they're actually going to have to figure out, who's going to make this team and who's not. I think a guy like Remigio, who we talked about a lot last year going into the season, was kind of a camp darling, and I don't think ended up making the team, as well as, now you've got Jason Brownlee, you've got Tyquan Thornton, you've got an interesting group of wide receivers. So to get back to the main point of Josh Simmons and seeing him and Kingsley Suamataia together, I thought, was very, very pleasing to see after what we saw in that Super Bowl game. So I think you're right. I think Josh Simmons had a really good outing. They played the first couple of drives together. Obviously, Mahomes only in on the opening drive, 3 plays. And so I think it's promising nonetheless. I mean, depending on whatever we see over the next, couple of games and who we see in this next game for sure, because Andy's already talking about, kind of scaling the starters back for the second preseason game, which I think ever since we've went to a 3-game preseason over the 4-game preseason, it has been interesting to see how different coaches decide to maneuver, the preseason. I feel like the Chiefs have kind of standardly played loosely, with the starters in the first couple of games of the preseason. Then we get to that last game, and it's kind of like the full dress rehearsal where you see the first team come out, play the entire first half, come out for maybe a drive in the third quarter, and then call it a day. So I don't know. What do you think about Friday or tonight with Seattle?
Oh, that's true. I guess it is tonight. Um, you know, I do agree with you on that aspect. I feel like the 3 game preseason just kind of really shortened what you're going to see in terms of, who the starters are truly going to be. Obviously, with the Chiefs, that's not really that big of a question, other than 1 or 2 key spots, right? So I don't think a lot of people are going to be curious as to who the Chiefs starters are. Um, Maybe Jalen Moore at some point. We'll move over to right tackle, we talked about a couple weeks ago. But other than that, there's really no true impact. I think people want Andy to start the starters and just kind of see how they do in the first couple weeks and da 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 da. But do you really want to see that? I mean, do you really want to see Patrick go the first half of a preseason game that means 0? It's just kind of pointless. What I expect tonight, um, hopefully not a whole lot of Bailey Zappi. That was kind
I
of
agree.
pitiful in a way. Um, hopefully not a whole lot of Bailey Zappi. Hopefully not too much of Gardner Minshew either. I mean, it just seems like the Chiefs, outside of Chad Henne and Matt Moore, who are 2 older guys, just haven't really found a backup quarterback. It just seems like that is the elusive thing that the Chiefs have not really been able to find. Um, not that it's mattered too much, except for those couple of years ago when Patrick got hurt. Matt Moore came in, and I think he was coaching a high school team before that.
Yeah, I think
Came back
something like
in and
that.
won 2 or 3 games, and he played really well. So, I think the Chiefs have had a lot of success with veteran guys, but they just haven't had a lot of success with guys who have played for a while but aren't really veterans. Um, so they need to figure that out. I mean, obviously, if Patrick gets injured, that becomes an issue, but until then, it doesn't.
So you don't like Gardner
But
Minshew? Because personally, I'm kind of a fan of Minshew. I think it's an upgrade from having Gabbert last year.
it's an upgrade from having Carson Wentz last year.
Or, yeah, Carson
Um,
Wentz and then Gabbert the year before. But I think it's an upgrade from
right.
both. I don't know. Because Carson Wentz, I mean, yeah, it's probably still an
And listen,
upgrade.
and listen, and listen. I liked Carson Wentz for a long
Yeah,
time, but he's just so unhealthy, and I think you could
yeah.
tell that affected his rhythm in general. Um, it was just he wasn't going to make it. And I wish him a lot of luck anywhere he decides to go if he's still playing. I don't know, but it's tough. It's tough when you get injured so many times and have that mental block in your head. Then you go to Kansas City and have to back up Patrick Mahomes. I mean, that's a tough wall to scale. Did I like Gardner Minshew? I do, but did I like him Thursday night? No. So is it a good backup choice? Yeah, he's probably the best backup in the league right now. But hopefully we don't have to cross that bridge. I just it's just something you notice as a fan. It's kind of like, man, we're not good picking backup quarterback this season outside of the older guys. So I mean, I think we'll see a lot of just trying to figure out who the backups are going to be. Quarterback wise, it'll probably be Minshew. I don't foresee Bailey Zappi getting a chance here. Um, the one thing I really liked was Smith, the running back from SMU. I always forget his first name. Uh,
Brashard Smith.
Rashard Smith, thank
Yeah.
you. Um,
Real quick to go back on Carson Wentz, he just signed with the Tennessee Titans.
okay, I was going to say, I thought he signed somewhere. I
It
couldn't
said
remember
10
if he did,
hours
but I
ago.
swore he
Yes,
did.
that must have been
Okay,
on
okay,
Thursday afternoon sometime. We're
okay.
recording Thursday night, so. I didn't realize
So,
McCole Hardman was a Packer. Apparently he's struggling in camp. Just a side bit
he
I saw
is?
while searching that. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't either. I
I feel like I
know he ran
remember
back Juju.
hearing that, but I,
Yeah,
don't remember if that makes sense.
I mean, I know he ran back Juju, which was a surprise when I saw him in a couple of videos on TikTok from Chiefs training camp. But it's McColl's an interesting one to kind of figure out back and forth because we brought him back, after that trade and from the Jets, and we brought him back the following year too, didn't we?
Yeah. That
Two
was,
years.
what, 2 years
Okay.
ago, I think. that they
Yeah.
traded back with the
Mhm.
Jets and then brought him back last year.
And not that I wasn't a fan of McCole, it just seemed like we had kind of seen McCole Hardman,
Yeah,
and
I agree.
it's not like he was going to blow you off the screen, but I didn't see what the Chiefs saw, and
Well,
obviously
I
they
think
saw
he
enough, and
worked
they're
really well in the Chiefs' offense outside of what they really
he did.
wanted him to do, and they wanted him to
Hmm.
become the next Tyreek Hill. And McCole Hardman cannot
Right?
track the ball downfield. But
No.
McCole Hardman has a touchdown in every single game he's ever played the San Francisco 49ers off of running an end around or a jet sweep.
Well,
Like I don't know what it was about
yeah.
the jet sweep that destroyed San Francisco, but that was something 2 years ago before the Super Bowl that I pointed out in a film breakdown heading into the Super Bowl, and then that's when we got the corn dog play where he faked the sweep pretty much coming down in motion
Hmm.
and then pop back out for a touchdown. So I don't know. He was a 49er killer, and I do think that he worked in like Andy likes to run horizontally a lot, to get something set up.
Yeah.
We saw it with the end around that Xavier Worthy ran to score the touchdown last year in the Baltimore game, and I think he had a couple different touchdowns with that. But that's where McCole Hardman worked out. But now you've got Xavier Worthy that can kind of take over the real responsibility of that role, like wanting to be able to also stretch the field. The fact that I was watching film on 2022 a couple of weeks ago, and they had MVS running jet sweeps in Arizona in that first game blew my mind and just thought, oh, wow, you guys saw a lot in MVS that never materialized. And that's fine. It happens. The Chiefs trying to really, be budgeteers, getting the guys that nobody else, that's good enough that's going to find a team, but nobody wants to go after. And I think the Chiefs like to do that a lot. I mean, I think Jalen Moore is that guy this offseason where I don't think anybody wanted to go after him as their starter, but the Chiefs saw a lot of value in somebody that they're probably going to overpay for what he's doing. But after that Super Bowl, after the previous Super Bowl, I mean, I don't think the offensive line has ever truly been fixed like all the way. That interior has been really good, but I think that's another point that a lot of people miss is that when we're talking about pass pro, we're talking about tackles. We're not talking about guards and centers, where the Chiefs have been set up to run the football, and we know how Andy is with running the football. And I think Jalen Moore is that security blanket because they know we don't have a swing tackle. Wanye Morris was supposed to be that guy for us, and I mean, I saw him playing right guard last Friday night. So, I mean, I don't think that Wanye is going to or has worked out the way they wanted him to.
No, he hasn't, and you nailed it on the head with that one. We just haven't had the ability to get a swing guard or a swing tackle or a swing fence, a swing door, whatever. It just we haven't had that. Um, yeah, Andy's running the ball skills are we can run the ball.
Right.
So I mean, it's. But I will say for the one run he had, Pacheco looked very strong.
Yes.
He looked like he was confident again, which was good to see. Um, those broken legs for running backs are almost a killer for you.
I don't
Because
think
I
he should
mean,
have came back last year.
no, he shouldn't have.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It was very obvious that he was very nervous about it, and rightfully so. But anytime you snap your leg like that as a running back, it probably takes a lot, if not all of you, to come back and try to play again. Because I mean, that's for any NFL player, but especially running back. But he looked really strong. He looked good. The line held him well, ran on Trey Smith's side, um, and just took it right up. So hopefully there's more health there. Kareem Hunt looks to be the second string, which is fine. I'm not sure he's happy about that because that man was gassed about 4 weeks into the year when he signed and came here. I don't think he expected to get that much work, but surprise. So,
Right.
um, there's not a lot of negatives, I feel like, and which is good. I don't think there's a lot of negative feelings right now heading into tonight against Seattle. Um, it'll be interesting to see what Seattle comes out with more than the Chiefs. I feel like the Chiefs are kind of figured out. Receiver, there might be who's the sixth or fifth guy? Tight end. Do we keep 4 tight ends? I guess will be the bigger question too.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because
but
how about
outside of
Robert
that,
Tonyan on Friday night?
yeah, how about that? Yeah, and I've heard Chiefs fans say, "Well, who's Robert Tonyan?" Robert Tonyan's a good tight end,
He is.
and I think people have kind of forgotten that Robert Tonyan can play. So I was kind of surprised that we went out and got him because honestly, he could be a starter on a less than average football team. So
Yeah.
I I felt like that was a great pickup, and I think he could easily, well, not easily, but potentially beat out Noah Gray for the second straight. I mean, he's got that kind of ability. Um, I don't remember seeing a lot of Noah Gray the other night. That could have been just by design. We didn't see
I
Travis at
think
all,
so.
really.
Yeah,
So,
Kelsey
I
was only out
maybe.
to the opening drive.
So I think Andy feels like Noah has that second string locked up. But if Tanya keeps playing like this, he may not. So, I think there could be a battle for 4 tight ends. I personally like 4 tight ends just because we seem to have our guys, tight ends, get injured a lot, especially last year. So I don't mind having 4 tight ends. Um, Defensively, like I said, I think everything looked fine. I think it looked like it should have. A couple of your rookies played pretty well. Karloftis looked super awesome. So, I'm not worried. I feel confident in this team. I feel way more confident than I did last year. Um, Everything looks fine to me. I don't know how you feel about it, but I don't see a lot of, oh boy, at least not right now.
Yeah, no, I agree with you to a point. I feel like it's the same problems as usual. Um, Speaking more on the defensive side, just the film breakdown that I put out yesterday, where there was a couple of times where there was a little bit of missed coverage. On the opening drive, Leo Chanel kind of missed on a zone coverage where he got. No, it was Chamari Connor that got carried too far and out of his zone. And then Leo Chanel kind of jumped the gun on passing off Marvin Harrison where they didn't have anybody in the middle. And I think that was kind of on Chanel. Other than that, I think pretty good. Jack Cochran worries me. The fact that the linebacking room is so weak and really has been. I mean, really all of Mahomes' career, after Justin Houston and Tom Ball Lee were both gone, and Derek Johnson too. I mean, an amazing linebacking core. It feels like the linebacker room has just been pretty rough. I mean, you drafted Leo Chanel and Nick Bolton. They've been awesome. You signed Drew Tranquill, which was a sneaky good deal the offseason they did it. And then after that, who do you have? Nobody. Jack Cochran, I mean, is your guy. Cole, Christian Cole, I think, the kid from one of the military academies, but I don't know. I just don't love that. But I did like Jeffrey Bassa. What we saw out of him, I thought he looked pretty good. I thought Gelati looked really good too. It felt like on every play, Gelati was just somewhere near the ball. No matter what was going on, he was somewhere near the ball. I like that. That's instinct. Jaden Hicks had that interception he made. His instinct made that play because Hicks started sinking back in his zone where he had a tight end in front of him and just the awareness to know, okay, I can run up and get this tackle, but I see, a crosser coming behind me that one of our guys is chasing. I can't remember if it was Connor or who it was that was chasing Harrison on the pick, but, that would have been wide open. Kyler Murray just didn't see him, and all of that together, just the instinct to have. I really think Jaden Hicks can be very strong for the Kansas City Chiefs, but it still looks like they're kind of wanting to prioritize Chamari Connor and Brian Cook over Jaden Hicks. So I don't know. We'll see. And I feel like we see so many times where the Chiefs like to run 3 safeties and rotate safeties and do all these crazy things that Spags likes to do. And I think that's the bread and butter of the Chiefs. I mean, they're a bend, don't break defense, very much so. So I say all that to say this, that I agree with you, that I don't see any glaring problems. I think that you're correct in the fact that, we know who the starters are going to be. I think the tight end situation is very interesting because I also like 4 tight ends. I think that Jared Wiley's got to make this team. more than likely. I mean, we saw him get hurt. He had some steam built up last year. What do we see out of him tonight? What do we see out of him in I believe it's the Lions, the third preseason game at home? So we'll see what we get out of the tight end room, because I would like to see 4 tight ends for the Chiefs. And then the receiver room is going to be really interesting with Tyquan Thornton, Jason Brownlee, like we talked before. Because you obviously know you've got Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, Jalen Royals. And then after that, you got Juju. That's 5 right there. At best, there's one more spot between, guys like Nico Remigio, and Thornton and Brownlee, as we were talking about. So I think the offense, there may actually be more questions of just who's getting a spot on the roster, because then look at the running back situation. You've got Pacheco. You've got Hunt. You've got Carson Steele still, who can play fullback. So I think that's interesting just from an Andy Reid perspective of like what he likes to do with the offense, but you can always throw a tight end in there. He also lined up Kareem Hunt at fullback a lot last year. So interesting to where you want to go with it personnel for 2025. Brashard Smith, another big question mark, because you also still have Elijah Mitchell. So there's some real interesting decisions are going to be made with the offense, whereas the defense, I think, pretty set in stone, just to see where we get to through the season, who steps up. Noel Williams, I think, is another good corner. What we saw out of him, I thought, was pretty good on Friday night. The offense is the one that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, if we could get rid of Carson Steele, that'd be great.
What you think of Carson Steele?
He fumbles all the time.
That's fair.
But, I like that he runs hard, but he can't be trusted. I mean, he's shown that multiple times. And Andy's tried to give trust to him, but it seems like every time he does, he fumbles the ball. So, Elijah Mitchell, I should say. Rashad Smith. I mean, that's tough. I do agree with you. I think that'll be a tough decision on who that third running back is. Because surely they're not going to keep 4 running backs. They might. I don't know. But
well, and you can't keep 4 tight ends and 4 running backs, I don't think. So, right. I mean, you got to pick and choose. Right. One of them's got to be 3. One of them's got to be 4. Or if, that's even their plans. Maybe they go 3 and 3, but we'll see.
I think Andy will keep 4. I think they like Wiley a lot, just because of his size in general. And he can play receiver, too, because he has athleticism in him. So I think they like him just for that threat. So I'm sure they'll keep Wiley. But, yeah, I think it'll be a 3 running back room. I do agree with you. My hope would be Elijah Mitchell would be that third running back, just for the fact of his experience and just kind of, he has the ability to be a game breaker when we saw it in 49ers, when he had to step up when guys were hurt and stuff like that. So, I mean, he can definitely be a big-time running back. So I don't know. I agree with you. I think the only true questions are running back. I think that's a huge question mark. Tight end was a question mark, but I think we kind of figured that out. I think it'll be 4. I don't think it'll be that much of a question. But, I mean, you know how I feel about the linebackers. They can't cover tight ends, and they have trouble reading the zone like you've shown multiple times. It just seems like they have a really hard time staying out in the flats. I don't know why that is. I don't know if that's, it's not Bolton's game. We've known that forever.
Yeah.
But, I don't know if that's just a weakness that they can't overcome. But you did touch on another point that we've seen a lot last year. I saw a lot of comment on Twitter because people were complaining, why are we going to play McDuffie? He got burned a couple times last year. Well, he got burned a couple times last year because there was nobody back there to help.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was what? Miscommunication, because they weren't doing what they were supposed to do.
Yeah. And
you saw it. And McDuffie would point it out every time. If no one's back there to help you, you're going to get turned around and burned in the NFL. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, it's a tough decision to make. I personally like Jaden Hicks more. I think he's turned into a great. Honestly, I think it should be Jaden Hicks and Brian Cook.
Yeah,
I think those are the safeties. I think Brian Cook has shown he's definitely very capable of playing that position very well. Now, free safety or strong safety, I think that's a question. But, I feel like Jaden Hicks would probably be better of a backfield roamer, and, you could put Cook towards the middle more. But I don't know how
Well,
you feel about that. But
Well, what I think is interesting is that you got to replace Justin Reed, right, at safety. And I do kind of think I kind of like Chamari Connor in that spot more than I like Jaden Hicks, just because I want Jaden Hicks to be able to be out in coverage. I think that, like I was saying, his instincts and, he kind of goes with the feel of the play. Watching him on film is what it looks like. And I think that he needs to be more of a, free roamer over the top, or, I mean, you can move him around, obviously, and he can take some of those Justin Reed reps. But, like, that was one thing that I talked a lot about with Justin Reed was, everybody's like, he can't cover. He can't cover. He's terrible at covering. And, I mean, like on PFF, I think he was graded as one of the bottom safeties in the league at coverage. That's not what we're asking. That's not what the Chiefs defense is asking Justin Reed to do, though. So I don't care he can't cover. That's not what they want him to do. And when he needed to, he could. But, I mean, catch him on third down on a blitz, and he's in the backfield in a couple of seconds. So that's the only thing with Hicks where I do somewhat understand the rotation at safety. But, and I agree with you, too, because it's Brian Cook does have that over the top. It's very much his game where, I don't necessarily want to see Brian Cook up on the line getting ready to come on a blitz or something, maybe fake a blitz, and bluff back into coverage. But I don't know. Hicks is a little bit of a hybrid where you can do both of those with that. But Chamari Connor, that Justin Reed game, is also his game. And we saw Chamari Connor get burned, coming in on nickel coverage last year. And when we had, cornerbacks down. But I think that's also goes back to Chamari Connor's a safety. And they like to play him as both. But unless he has some protection around him in coverage, he's not the guy you want on an island with somebody.
no, and I think that's the other question too: is do you change how your cornerback packages look because of the fact McDuffie is one of the best corners in the league, if not 1B, 1C, whatever you want to call it.
He's top three, definitely.
But top three, absolutely. But like I said, if he doesn't have anyone to help him, it's going to get ugly. So, do they change how their cornerback covered packages look? That was a mouthful, but do they change how they look? Do they move more towards two guys on one side, fake that double coverage and just push them more towards the middle, and force more of a kind of a jump ball situation? I just feel like they have the ability to jumble the offenses more than they did last year, because it just seemed like offenses ran whatever they wanted. Now, they didn't score a whole lot, but it just seems like the offenses got to run their whole play sets and let plays develop, and that was a huge problem. I mean,
the defense definitely regressed last year.
Mm-hmm, it did, and the bigger part of that was, all those guys went back there. Oh, look, there's Noah Fant wide open for the 15th time today for 10 yards. It's like, well, son of a bitch. Just at some point I think Spags, and obviously he's had a full year to kind of diagnostic on that and kind of run everything and see what he has to fix. But it'll be interesting. I think the Chiefs are always interesting, especially coming into this year. But if you've heard, Colin Cowherd already wrote us off, so there's really no point of playing this year. Dynasty's over. I don't know if you've heard the bad news from the great Colin Cowherd. But, I think the only thing that makes me nervous is, and we kind of talked about this before we started, was the receiver core and the impact Rashee Rice is going to have when he gets suspended. There's not a question of if anymore, unfortunately. It'll be when he gets suspended. But from what I've heard is that there was a deal in place and he didn't like it. So now he has to go to an actual, I don't know if they're legal, but an actual hearing and decide how many games he will be suspended. And as we know, the NFL does not like to be told no. So it'll be interesting to see how many games he gets. But unfortunately, it sounds like it'll be more than 4. How do you feel on that one?
Yeah, from what I've seen, it says, most people are saying 4 to 6, which I understand the 4 to 6, but the only part about that doesn't make sense to me, and we were talking about this beforehand, is Jordan Addison It's his second offense. I can't remember what. He had like some type of speeding, I think, going like 100, well over 100. And then now a DUI. His suspension was 3 games. That it just doesn't match up to me, really, because I don't know if nobody got hurt in the situation, right? Nobody was detrimentally injured. It was dumb to be racing sports cars on the highway, and he should be punished for it. I don't know. I mean, this is also another part where it gets weird, and sometimes I don't even like talking about these situations just for the simple fact that he's going to get punished by the legal system. Let the legal system take care of it. I know there's a, what is the name of the policy? The whatever policy to keep everybody in check and not doing anything crazy that gives the NFL like a bad rap. Can't think of the word right now, but I understand that there is that policy, and you do have to give him a suspension. And 4 to 6 would seem fine to me, I think, with what happened. But then you look over at Minnesota and you see Jordan Addison getting 3 games for his second offense. I don't know. Because then you go back to the Henry Ruggs situation, obviously a tragic situation. And he's, I mean, as far as I know, still on the indefinite suspension list. But he also went to prison, so there's that part to it. So obviously, very tragic situation, and you don't want to see that happen again. And how do you see that happen again? Well, racing sports cars on the highway is how you see that happen again. So I do think that it is a hefty offense for Rashee Rice. It was a dumb moment. Hopefully he learned from it. When we're talking about millionaires that are 21 years old, that ain't never seen money like this, you're going to do dumb stuff. I would have done plenty of stupid things if I had millions of dollars at my disposal at 21 years old, 22, whatever. So
I've known you a long time. It didn't take you $1 million, but
yeah, exactly. Imagine if I had millions of dollars when I was that age. It would have been really dumb, right?
But yeah, I 100% agree with you, and you did nail a point home that I think a lot of people are scared of. These are people who imagine you in your 20s playing your dream and getting paid millions of dollars, being successful, and then knowing that you're going to get $30 to $50 million more in a couple of years.
A year, every year, you're going to bring in money like that.
And I think that needs to be studied more in people's eyes, because I don't think they realize what that means to people, especially these people who, and it doesn't matter what color you are. If you come from poor, you come from poor.
Yes.
If you're coming in there and you're making $12 an hour your whole life, and then you're coming and making $200 million in 10 years, that changes you. And sometimes for the better, sometimes for not. But we're talking generational stuff here, and and I think that gets lost in translation a lot. Now, that doesn't make an excuse for making the correct judgment calls and doing things you should do and should not do. You were right. That shouldn't have never happened. I don't know what he was thinking, and he's going to get punished for it, and he should. But the flip side of this is that I believe he gets to play until September 30th, and then he goes to get sentenced or whatever
the terminology is for this.
Yeah. I just fear that with it being the Chiefs and with it being, a profile situation, that it'll be more than it should be. Now, obviously, he can appeal, but will he appeal? Will Andy let him appeal? Is the other question. So I don't know, but it just kind of seems like we're dealing in a league now. And I've said this before. If you're going to start paying college and high school kids money, it has to be done in a better way. Because I think that the Northern Illinois coach, I forget his name, but he said something really interesting. He said, when you pay these kids, I didn't get paid. I got paid in experience. I got a handshake. And I went on to live my life, and I coached in the NFL for 5 years, and now I'm here. But now you're dealing with millionaires before they're 19 years old.
Yeah.
He said, so you tell me, how different that is for a kid who had no money and now he has a couple $1 million in his pocket. The sports world has changed completely, just from money alone. Now, obviously, these people deserve it. These kids deserve it. These athletes deserve it. Everyone deserves a cut of the pie.
Right. Especially in college where they've been making billions upon billions,
billions and
off
billions
of
billions,
these kids, and they get absolutely nothing. I do like your thought process in that, though, because I do agree with you to a point where, let's not cut off the funding. These kids deserve to be paid for what they're going out there to do, and I don't want to hear they get a free education. That's not what they're there for. That's not what the athletic director sees. That's not what, anyone in the school sees is, you're here for an education. No, I'm here to play football. I'm here to, play whatever sport I'm playing and, move on to the next stage of my life. And you're profiting off of it. Why am I not profiting? So I think that almost, obviously all of these kids are going to be above 18, but almost something of like a trust or something you could put into where you get so much, maybe it's a percentage that might not work out just because some kids are going to get paid less, but at least that you're getting from the school to where we see, I don't think it's a terrible idea, but like a salary cap in college sports. I don't think it's a terrible idea. I've heard that floated out since the NIL came out, but I don't know, something to where that money's going to be available to them at some point, but maybe almost in like I don't know, man, like a Roth account, like some type of retirement or, I don't want them to be held from their money, but I just mean something like that, not exactly that, but if you have to create something for that to where, you can have X amount of this money in 5 years, you can have X amount in 10 years, which, for adults, it seems like that's crazy. But like you said, I think it should be studied more, really, at the end of the day, to see what scientifically is the best way to go about this. Because I don't think us as normal humans have the capacity to figure out. Because like you said, you come from poverty, like that does something to you. And when you get money, and money like that, I can't even comprehend, having that kind of money just disposable. And you're going to have that feeling like, well, this money will never go away. I've never seen a number that big in my bank account ever. Who cares if I go shop and spend, $10,000 here, $15,000 here, or, anything like that. So I don't know. It's leveraged against, I don't know how to say it, but it's leveraged for the man, if that really is the best way to put it. Because just the other day I was seeing how some baseball player had leveraged his future earnings into a loan. And to where it's like, damn, man, you are going out and getting a loan on your future earnings. Now a percentage of your contract goes back to that bank. That's crazy to think. And to think we can't set something better up for young adults that are getting millions of dollars.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I agree with you, and Shaq, it's funny because Shaq actually has a really good story on this. I think it was his rookie contract, and he got $1 million, I believe it ended up being. And everyone and his family wanted something, and he was going to give it to him because he there's $1 million. It's
Hey,
great.
the 30 for 30 broke. Great documentary.
Yeah. And he said, once he was done spending his finance guy called him and said, "You're broke." He said, "What do you mean? I got $1 million." It was just gone, and I don't, obviously money management is a lot different than it used to be. Right. But I don't even think these people realize, how fast $1 million can happen if people are asking for things and if you're willing to give it to them and this and that and da 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 da. But it's money in today's sports world is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Shohei. Look at how much money he got.
Yeah.
And look at how much money there's a couple of guys coming up in the MLB that they're gonna get. So it's Soto. It's just absurd how much money these organizations make and how much money you can make. So I think it'll be studied closer in about 15, 20 years. I think
Hell,
people will
LeBron is a
realize
billionaire.
that, yeah, LeBron. Well, I mean, he did his own business stuff, and
Right.
he deserved that too. But LeBron's a billionaire. There's a lot of people out there who don't realize that there's athletes who have made over $1 billion just shooting the ball,
Yeah.
and that's absurd. It's
Yeah.
really absurd if you think about it. It's awesome for them, but if you're going to make $1 billion putting a ball in a hoop, sign me up.
Right. No, that's
You
a
know?
fact. That's me and Ray joke about that all the time about baseball. Is like, I get like it's just the top percentages that make these insane contracts, but in baseball, it's like, man, you go out there and figure out how to hit 30, 40 home runs a year, and all of a sudden someone's handing you $750 million just on one contract. Like, hey, play for me the next 10 years, and here you go. All this money's yours. Absolutely insane.
Well, look at Bobby. He played Major League Baseball 3 years. Now he's got 12 years, $284 million.
Yeah.
So I mean, he literally played at the Major League level for 3 years,
And that was a cheap deal.
and it was a cheap deal. It's 100% a cheap deal. Yeah, 1,000% a cheap deal.
Exactly.
Speaking of cheap deals, and the dog days of baseball, as we called it a couple of weeks ago. Boy, howdy is it. It just kind of seems like we're getting into that rhythm now. The Royals' offense is phenomenal, which is, I had to clutch my heart after saying that there for a second because I thought I was having a delusion. But they're playing phenomenally. They're averaging, I think, almost 6 runs a game since the All-Star break. Of almost 10 hits a night. But the problem is now is that Chris Bubich is hurt. Cole Rangis is done. Seth Lugo, even though he signed a 2-year extension, a lot of people thought he would get traded. That ended up not being the case. Struggled the other night against Nationals, gave up a grand slam in the first inning. The Royals ended up scoring 7 runs, but ended up losing 8-7. So it just kind of seems like as soon as the Royals get something going, the other side of it falls off. It's just like, well, damn, come on. It's
the seesaw.
It's the seesaw. And a lot of times you're the one kid that's 90 pounds and the other kid that's 170 pounds and sitting on the other side. So, it's just really, it's baffling. Not baffling. It's frustrating, I think, for a lot of Royals fans. It just kind of seems like they're right there. They've been right there all year. They're 1 game under 500 now. The offense is playing so much better. But it just seems like these injuries are just really just putting an absolute hole in their sail that if they didn't have injuries, they'd be probably a different team right now. But it just seems like injuries are really holding them back.
To their credit, or whatever you want to call it, but I think they have a pretty weak schedule to finish the season off, really. I mean, that is one thing that I think they got going for them right now. You're coming off winning a series against the Nationals. You got the White Sox at home this weekend. You got the Rangers at home all week. Then you got a tough series on the road at Detroit, at Chicago. Go play the White Sox 3 more games. 1 more series with the Tigers at home. And then September also looks Angels, Twins, Guardians, Phillies, tough series. Mariners, tough series. Then you got the Blue Jays. Another tough series to end, but then you get the Angels and A's to finish off the year. So I do think that they have a good shot at, if they're going to have a shot at making a run at the playoffs, like they have a decent enough schedule to do so.
Well, that sounded good, and then you mentioned the Phillies, Mariners, Blue Jays, Tigers, and I said, well, it's not as good as it was. But, it's only 4 of the best teams in baseball, no big deal.
Yeah.
But
I know, as I was reading, I was thinking the same thing, where I was like, well, maybe this isn't as good as what it looked when I was looking at it at first.
But ironically, they played really well against the best team in baseball. They took 2 out of 3 in Toronto. Boston was a little bit of a dud, but Boston was red hot at the time, and Boston is pretty much unbeatable at home this year.
And they still got out of it with a 7-3 victory in the final game.
Yeah. So, I mean, and they didn't look terrible. So, sometimes you just got to take those in baseball. It's just how it happens. But, Kyle Isbell has quietly become one of the hottest hitters in baseball. I think he was hitting about 240 something, maybe even 230. Well, maybe a little bit, about 242. He's now around 270. So he's really taken off. Vinny's starting to get his power back. He's had home runs in back-to-back games. Um, Bobby's still trying to find his power from last year. I think he'll find it here in a couple games. It's eventual. Um, but it just kind of seems like the Royals are really having a hard time at second base. Jonathan India was traded for. He's good, but it just kind of seems like he's not as consistent as the Royals want him to be at the plate. Adam Frazier's been really good. He's hitting 270 right now. Last year, I think he only hit 220 as a whole coming to the Royals, but he's hitting 270 right now. So the Royals have a lot of good pieces. Randall Gittrick, I can never say his last name. I'm sure you can. Rand Grichuk, thank you. He's come in and played some good moments. Nick Lofton he's kind of fallen off offensively, but he's a great defender. So I mean, the Royals have pieces, but obviously, the injury to Jack Caglione. And here's something I wanted to tackle with you, but Jack seems to be fine, and he'll be back probably pretty soon. Is Jack Caglione's first game, 4 for 5, 4 hits, hit the ball 5 times. The guy is average like a 330 hitter in AAA. A lot of Royals media has said, well, keep him in AAA the whole month of August, have him come back in September. Do you really think he's learning anything in AAA at this point? Because, I mean, he's getting the cover off the ball every night.
I would kind of agree with that. And I would say just look at it in a different perspective. You're getting that confidence up. Regain that confidence, because at the big league level this year, he's hit 147. We've seen, 5 home runs, 10 ribbies, 1 stolen base. Nice. But and he's also got a negative 1.3 WAR. So he hasn't had the success you would like to see at the big league level. As a guy that just came up, I don't think that Caglione, if you went into the season and I were to ask you, is Jack Caglione going to make the roster? Is he going to be a starter this year? What would your answer be?
I'm going to sound like a dick, but I felt like he was going to be.
That's fair. But you don't expect him to be an all-star, right?
No, I didn't expect him to be an all-star.
Right.
No.
So
but
I do think.
I
was just going to say, I think having him at AAA and letting him get that confidence back, then, hey, come back up for September. Let's see, how you do. And then we'll have a whole off season, spring training, and you're going to be our guy next year.
Yeah. I think that's fair, but on the flip side of it, playing devil's advocate, how much more is he going to learn, by hitting the absolute raw hide off baseballs every night in Omaha for 3 weeks, So yes, it's a confidence booster, and yes, it's all that, but we already saw he knows he's confident in AAA. We've seen it, So I don't think he's concerned about AAA at all, or AA or whatever it ends up being, but I think he just needs time in the majors. We talked about this way back when he first got called up. We talked about Jordan Walker a lot.
Yeah.
Some of those guys just need time. But I think fans, we talked about this too. Fans can be impatient. We can be impatient. It's just like, well, be a star right now. Well, that's not how baseball works. Right. It's not how baseball works. So I think in time he will find his rhythm in the majors. The Royals do need another power bat. Maybe they bring him up and just play DH for the rest of the year, which is fine. I think the Royals have the defensive outfield now to where they don't need him to be that right fielder anymore, at least this year. I think the only true question mark is who's going to back up Salvi. I mean, Salvi needs more time at DH and first base and just kind of days off as catcher. Obviously, trading Freddie Fermin to the Padres. And man, how about Freddie Fermin? Going to the Padres. I mean, he's tore up. He's hitting 337, has a home run. Now, there's a guy who just needed to be a starter. And he was a starter caliber already. But, going from Kansas City to San Diego, It was very evident that Freddie Fermin was easily a starting catcher. He just needed a chance to do it, and he's doing
Yeah.
phenomenally. So,
How'd you
very
feel about
proud
that
of him
trade?
and what he's able to do.
How'd you feel about the
It
Fermin
needed to
trade?
be done.
Yeah.
It needed to be done. You know, it. He was the piece that made the most sense, and we needed arms, especially now.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of is a bummer, but it made the most sense. He was the most expendable. A lot of people said, why didn't you trade Maikel Garcia? Well, why on earth would you do that? Who's going to play
Yeah.
third base? So,
He's still hitting over 300.
yeah, yeah, so I mean, Freddie made the most sense, just from a logistic standpoint. And, I think he's doing phenomenal in San Diego. Falter's had some issues, um, a couple of different times, but, he's looked okay, but he's definitely had some issue. Bargett or Badgert or whatever. Oh, the pitcher from San Diego is escaping me at the moment, but he's done really well. So I mean, there's some pieces that they've gotten out of trades that have done well. It just seems like there's always a hiccup in the motion. There's always a hiccup in the machine, but I think they can figure it out. Like I said, they play really well against some of the best teams in baseball. They don't seem to really be lost when they play in those games. So,
I
can they make the playoffs? They're only four back. So,
Yeah, I think they totally can, and I think that this year is another year which I know as fans we get impatient, like you were saying, and to think that making the playoffs after making the playoffs last year is a win, I do think it's very much a win for the Royals this year. I think that this year isn't the year. Obviously you're not going to win a World Series this year, at least from the looks of it at the moment. That's not the goal this year, but this is a team that I think that if they can, just like we're talking about Jack, get that confidence, get back into the playoffs, even if they get swept in the wild card round or something like that, lose 2 games in a row, you go into next year saying, hey, we made the playoffs 2 years in a row. We have Bobby Witt, who's a superstar already. We have Jack Caglione, who could be the next superstar. Maikel Garcia broke out last year. I mean, everything can, Bubich, re-signing, I can see his face, Thugo. But re-signing him and keeping that going, keeping that pitching rotation together, I do think that if they make the playoffs, 2026 has to be a big year for the Kansas City Royals and has the potential to be back at that point where they were in 2015
I agree with
or
you.
14, I
And
guess,
I
but
think
that range.
I think they're on the cusp of. They're kind of doing it in reverse order because if you remember in 2013 they finished I think 10 games above 500 but didn't make the playoffs. They were a couple
Yeah,
games short. Then 2014 obviously they made the playoffs, made all the way to World Series. 2015 they won the whole thing. But you know, it just kind of seems like they're building to that. Obviously, I feel like people would want them to be a little better right now. But it almost seems eerily similar to 2013, where they were kind of inconsistent. And I think at one point they were 10 or 12 games under 500. They ended up finishing 10 games above 500. Um, so I think there's a lot of positives. There's a lot of super positives about this team. But, the question mark is what's the outfield outside of Kyle Isbell? You're bringing in Adam Frazier, you're bringing in Gertrick, who are good players, but, they're not going to be there forever.
right.
They're there for the end of this year and probably go somewhere else, and they're both older guys. You have Yastrzemski, another guy who they brought in via trade, who's been good, a really good defender, made a lot of great plays in the outfield a couple different times the other night. But, he's not the long-term answer either. So I think the Royals have a lot of long-term questions to answer in terms of outfield. Like I talked about Carter Jansen, who is a big-time prospect at catcher. I think we might see him in September. I hope so. He's a really good athlete. Um, so the Royals have the pieces. It's just, I think the question that the fans want to know is, are we still putting in the effort to push the playoffs this year, or are we just kind of seeing what happens? And I think that's what a lot of people want to know. But the American League's super tough. super tough.
Yeah.
I mean, it just kind of seems like all these teams are hot right now, and on your guys' side of the NL, Milwaukee's volcanically hot, um, just tearing people limb from limb.
Yeah,
It
dude, you're not
seems,
kidding.
you know. But
To have an 8-game
you
lead
know,
on the Cubs at this point is insane. Even
and
just
the
when
Cubs
the
were
last
tearing
time we
people.
talked is crazy.
Mhm. Yeah, and the Cubs were tearing people limb from limb before that.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's just wild how good Milwaukee has gotten. Now, obviously, we talked about this before we went on the air. It just kind of seems like they've basically been the same team for the past 5 years. But
Mm-hmm.
they're not a bad team. Um, so yeah, it's just
I didn't
baseball.
realize that Cleveland had gotten back
And Cleveland's
to
got hot
playing
too.
decent.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, it's just baseball's runs. And we talk about this all the time. Baseball's runs. Cleveland at one point lost 10 in a
Yeah.
row.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're back to playing how they were supposed to. Because remember, a while ago I said, "What in the world happened to Cleveland?"
Yeah.
They
No.
were one of the best teams in
Trust me, I
baseball last
remember
year.
that as a Cardinals
Yeah,
fan because we went in and swept them in Cleveland, and that was through the midst of where I really believed, like, okay, we've got some hope. And then I think that was the series that started their 10-game skid, and slowly I realized, oh, that was Cleveland. That wasn't the Cardinals. That was Cleveland
yeah,
tanking at the moment, whereas the Cardinals just took advantage. And man, I
yeah.
think right now is the perfect way to summarize the Cardinals. 61-61, and in their last 10 they're
Mm-hmm.
5-5. Like, poetic to who they are right now, because they will give you a glimmer of hope. And even now, I saw yesterday, or maybe it was a couple days on Twitter, that, Colorado's coming to town and these are the opponents for the Cardinals. They can make a real run at it. And I'm like, I feel like we've heard this all season. The Cardinals sold at the All-Star break, and I want to take a moment to say shout out to Ryan Helsley. I appreciate everything he did as a Cardinal, and hope to see him do well with the Mets, although I think that's just a cursed franchise, so we'll see where Helsley goes in this offseason. But seeing them trade him like I predicted, like I just remember before the deadline we did a pod not long before that, and you asked me how you felt like the Cardinals were going to approach it, and I went sideways into a whole pessimistic response, and it was 100% on point, like
Yeah, it
100% on
was.
point.
It was. Yeah, it's funny. It just kind of seems like both teams are in the same loop. It just seems like, okay, we're really good. Well, we're not so good. Well,
Yeah.
we're getting hot now. Well, no, we're not. It's just like, oh, come on.
At least
You
in
know,
Kansas City, I feel like there's hope for the future, whereas in St. Louis, it's just
yes.
kind of like, who are we going to be the next 5 years? Don't know.
Hmm.
The Royals, the next
Yeah.
5 years, that might be a championship window opening up, And I think in
Yeah.
St. Louis, it's about the opposite, where it's just like, let's hope we can turn somebody into a star or something to that effect.
It's funny, and I was watching this on TikTok. I saw that they ended up selling out the Cubs game, and that was probably their first sellout all year because
Probably.
of the protests or whatever. In 2 nights of this fan bananas, they both sold out.
Yep.
Does that deeply anger you as a baseball fan?
As a baseball fan, yes. I mean, I will be old man that yells at clouds right now because I loathe the Savannah Bananas. And I feel like we got into this on the last time that we talked. But or maybe it was a couple
Probably.
episodes ago. At some point, we talked about Savannah Bananas. No, I definitely do not like the Savannah Bananas. There's a few reasons to I don't like them. I feel like it's almost like a bastardization of the game, and this is where I'm getting into my old man bag because I know, like, they're viral on TikTok and all of these things. Like, that's what they're aiming for, is like the TikTok crowd, the quick, scrolling through things like that. So I do understand that, but it's just like you're I feel like kind of messing it up, and maybe I'm wrong. I could be totally wrong because this could funnel more kids into baseball, but I feel like it's going to be the opposite, where it's like, oh, that's what baseball is? I want to play banana ball. Like,
Yeah.
not. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw pickleball even has their own league and they're on ESPN and all this stuff, and I'm just like, pickleball? Like, again, another thing that's kind of like just a bastardization of tennis, where it's like, I don't know. I don't pay attention to tennis or anything like that, but just something to compare it to. But they also killed a team that produced a lot of what would be major league talent, having college kids playing summer league and getting them on or fall ball, I think maybe. I can't remember, but they had a team that helped produce in Savannah, Georgia, and now it's just your Savannah by name. I don't know. Whatever. Go crazy with it.
Yeah, and I haven't found it to be that entertaining. It just kind of seems, I think you're right. And it's not necessarily being an old man and saying this is, doesn't make any sense or whatever. I get what they're trying to do, but, it's the whole pageantry of it and, bringing out a lady in a dress and singing a song and, having people dance around in cheerleader outfits that, are a bunch of grown men. I don't know, man. It's I get it, and it's very popular, but I'll sit at home and shake my fist at it. It doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense. But you know, all in all, we'll put it this way. I think as a whole, I think the Royals fan base is confident of what's to come in general. But as you know, Kansas City is very, well, let's just do it right now. Yeah. If we have the pieces, let's do it right now. So it's a tough city to
Chiefs.
say. Yeah, it's a tough city to. Yeah, it's a tough city to say. Well, just hang on a minute. 2 years ago we lost 112 games.
Yeah.
So let's chill just a little bit. It's tough. You just watched them make the playoffs last year and sweep Baltimore in the wild card, and everyone said, "Well, great, here we go." And you played the Yankees competitively. A lot of questionable calls in that series to begin with. From the reviews, we'll talk about that some other time maybe or whatever. But it just. I get why people are frustrated because of the complete turnaround they had in 1 year, and now but if you look at it, this is a vastly better result than they've had the past 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
Vastly better.
We're trending up. So
yes.
And that's where you want
to
go.
You just, right. So, as long as it's not trending downwards to where we're going to lose 112 games again, I think you kind of just got to be appreciative. And if they make the playoffs, great. But if they finish over 500, awesome. Yeah, it's a huge step in the right direction. And I think Contreras is going to be able to figure it out. But, it's better than taking a punch in the face. Speaking of punches in the face, UFC 319 is coming up. Is it this Saturday or next weekend?
It is this Saturday, tomorrow night.
Okay.
Dricus du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev. I'm excited for this fight.
I don't know as much about it as you do. So you're going to have to smarten up people on this one. Who do you like? Who do you not like? What's the strength of each guy? And at the end of the night, who do you think gets their hand raised?
I have no idea what's going to happen in this fight. They're going to close that cage, and chaos is going to ensue, I think is what's going to happen. Chimaev, the way he fights, he's trying to finish a guy in 30 seconds every time he runs out there. We have seen a couple of kind of nicks in the armor, per se, with the Usman fight, where Usman kind of, maybe if you can get him to the later rounds, you're able to, get some offense on him. Gilbert Burns, as well, was able to hang with them. And du Plessis, nothing he does makes sense. I don't know how much you've seen of DDP, but that dude fights. I'll put it this way. There's a meme floating around the MMA community every time Dricus fights, and it is on paper, everyone beats Dreykus, but Dreykus can't read. So Dreykus goes out there and wins. Dreykus is a plus 150 dog to a minus 180 favorite for Chimaev. I'm kind of liking Dreykus. I think that this fight works out for him. If Chimaev comes out to tear his head off and, blows his arms out or runs out of steam, which I know Chimaev has good cardio, but I don't think he has Dreykus cardio. And I think the Dreykus can drag this into a dogfight that he can win. Personally.
So, I mean, what would be, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. Who would fall into a trap easier in the fight? If they're going into the fight, first round, let's say, and, somebody kind of gets into a rhythm, but it's kind of a misleading rhythm, and they kind of get led into, that trap of, here I come, but, oh, here comes a counter, and now you're in trouble. Who do you think is more susceptible to that in this fight?
I think probably Dreykus. I would say that if this fight ends in the first 2 rounds, Chimaev wins the belt. If it goes past that, Dreykus wins this fight. I think that I don't know if Dreykus can finish Hamzat, but I'm very confident he can win a decision. I think it's all about the cardio at that point. And I think Chimaev's still weird, where it's like, we saw his run in COVID. He had, 4 finishes within 4 months or something crazy like that during COVID. Got a big name for himself. Then he started having big fights, the Gilbert Burns fight, a lot of time off. Sometimes I guess I feel like I don't know who Chimaev is as a fighter all the way. And I think really these guys are just two crazy dudes. They go in there and they just game plan. What is that? We're just coming to smash. We're coming to beat the other guy up, and we're going to win. Whether we finish him or not, cool, but I'm going to beat somebody up tonight. I think that's the game plan for both of these guys, essentially. I think the ground game, the technical side of it, jiu-jitsu speaking, I think Dreykus is a little bit better. I could be wrong. I mean, again, I just feel like this is a really weird fight where it reminds me to a point of Yuri Prochazka and Alexander Pereira, where it's just chaos once they meet in the middle of the cage. So I would definitely say, early rounds, if there's a finish early, it's Chimaev, the winner. If this fight goes long, Dreykus is winning.
And then who would you feel would carry that belt longer? Obviously the middleweight division has always kind of been, I don't want to say a drag. It seems like it's pretty competitive throughout. But, it just kind of feels like once a middleweight holds the belt, it's kind of hard to take him off it. So, how would you feel about the future of the division from each guy after this fight if whoever walks away with the belt?
Chimaev, I'm worried about availability with him, to be quite honest. I mean, like I said, the last few years, it feels like, we've seen him fight maybe once a year, I think, after seeing him fight 4 or 5 times in 2020. So I think there's questions there. I think also how dedicated is he to the sport? I think sometimes, which could be 100%. There's always a million things going on in the background with the fighter. You're always hurt. You're always beat up. All that good stuff. Dreykus is good. I mean, he's held the belt. He's held on to it. He beat Izzy. He beat Sean Strickland twice now. So I think that he could be set up for a really long run. Maybe you got RDR coming up. I'm trying to think of some middleweights off the top of my head who would fight next. Paulo Costa, of course, just got back in the win column last month. So there's some options out there. Paulo Costa wants Chimaev next, so if Chimaev does win, you already have a big title fight to set up where those guys don't like each other. So I think it's interesting to see the future of the division either way. But the rest of this card is also very fascinating to me because I don't know if there's any huge fights, but Lerone Murphy versus Aaron Pico, getting to see Pico in his debut, Jeff Neal, Carlos Prates. That is 11 versus 12 in the welterweight division. Michael Venom Page returns to fight Jared Cannonier. Interestingly enough, Michael Venom Page is fighting at middleweight. I don't think Cannonier could make middleweight. And Tim Elliott fights Kai Asakara, and that's the main card. But Edson Barbosa is the fourth fight of the night, which is kind of wild to see. Jessica Andrade.
Yeah,
Jessica Andrade is on this card. Chase Hooper. Interesting card. Either way.
I guess my question to you would be, how does Dana kind of manage these cards? Because it just kind of seems like, every couple of pay-per-views, or whatever you want to call them now, events or whatever they end up being now, it just kind of seems like if you're not a true mainstream person, I don't know how interesting that would be to somebody. So if you're Dana, how do you manage these cards that maybe aren't as mainstream as some other ones?
I think that's a good question, because me and Ray were having this conversation the other day where I've really gotten back into MMA and watching heavy. I mean, I watched a fight night from the very first fight into the main event one night live, watched the whole thing. And I thought, I haven't done that in like 10 years. Like, it's been forever. When Facebook prelims were around, if you're old enough to remember those, on Spike TV and stuff. So that's where I grew up watching cards. I'm showing my age here, but I think that it's the same old MMA. It's just how dedicated are you of trying to follow it. I also think that a lot of these Apex cards are just the Access TV cards we used to have, where on Friday night you'd catch a local promotion like Titan, LFA, all these promotions that were around wherever. And I think now you just got to follow a lot. I mean, like Tuesday night, the first Dana White's Contender Series, where I think it's like 8 weeks or something that they do fights every Tuesday night and try to hand out contracts, which nice way to try to bring new people in. But I don't think that it's really lost its touch. I think it's because you see a lot of stuff. Like, I see YouTube videos popping up as I'm scrolling all the time saying, oh, the UFC's falling off. The UFC has fallen off. Why the UFC isn't successful anymore. And it's like, none of that is true. It's just the casual fans don't have Conor McGregor. And the thing about Jon Jones, we're going to talk about Jon Jones before we get out of here. Jon Jones was never a draw. That's one thing that people, I think, is a misconception. Jon Jones has never drawn pay-per-view numbers like some of the staples. Brock Lesnar, much more of a draw. Conor McGregor, GSP, Anderson Silva. Like, he's not on the same level pay-per-view wise as most of these people. I mean, yeah, probably the Cormier cards were probably way up there, and maybe the recent cards were up there too. I don't know numbers exactly, but I do know that Jon Jones is lower on the totem pole when it comes to pay-per-view buys. And so I think really we have a moment in time where the Conor McGregor thing happened. He blew up. COVID happened, and that also opened the door to the only sport that was still live and airing was the UFC. So that's what anybody that was watching sports, you had to watch the UFC unless you wanted to watch reruns of old, which, as a Chiefs fan, I was fine with watching the Super Bowl 100 times while we were shut down. But, yeah, I think with the UFC, you hit a point where everything peaked at the right time perfectly, to where you had the Conor McGregor era, you had the Floyd Mayweather-Conor McGregor matchup, you had COVID, and these people don't, like this new generation of fans, don't understand what the UFC was and what it's always been and where we're at. You're not going to get a shooting star every other year to pop up. Sometimes you go through these years of a lull where I'm excited about Dricus du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev. How much of the general public is, or like the casual fan? But personally, I love the sport.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. You just kind of got to put out the guys that you have to put on the best show. And obviously it's real. No, I don't mean show as a show, but you obviously book the fights to know what card is going to make you the most money. That's what it boils down
Absolutely.
to.
Yeah.
So, but it's interesting that you say that about Jones and his lack of ability to draw numbers. Why do you think that was? Because it's not like he wasn't, you know, I mean, we talk about him as being one of the best, if not the best of all time. So, why was that? Why do you feel like that was his draw? Was it because of all the allegations that he had and all the troubles he had, and maybe people thought he was a kind of a phony, with his personality and stuff like that? So, what was it that just didn't attract him as much as other people?
I think it's a mix of all of what you just said, pretty much, where, everybody felt like he was a big fat phony the moment that certain things started coming out. I think the first thing was where he wrecked the car and he broke the pregnant woman's arm and fled the scene. I want to say that was the first one that was like really big. And, before that, had very much of a humble kid image that, just wanted to do everything right. I mean, hell, on the day of the weigh-ins, I believe, before his title fight, before his, first title fight, you remember he chased somebody down and that stole some old lady's purse or something like that. Like, this man was heroic when he first came out. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this man's depraved, actually. This man is out here on benders. And, then you get the steroid allegations. They're not allegations. I mean, he tested positive. So the first time was the first Cormier fight where his levels were off. Nobody ever questioned it. They didn't dig deeper. There's just so many things surrounding him that I think the phony part might be a big one. But realistically, it's not an exciting fighter. I mean, Jon Jones has really never been an exciting fighter. I think early in his career was very exciting. You look at the Shogun fight, the finishes he was putting on. Really, I mean, he finished almost every fight until, let's see, Rashad Evans, I think. Rashad Evans would have been the one after Machida. And then after that, I don't know if he has another finish until Ciryl gone. Really? The Vitor fight. He finished Vitor.
True. Yeah, I guess I didn't really think about that. I mean, and I think when you mentioned the other guys, Brock, Silva, GSP, even BJ Penn, all those guys, Drew Money, Frankie Edgar. You mentioned a big one that I'm blanking on right now for some reason.
Ronda.
Connor, thank you. Ronda. Even Miocic. He drew money too. So,
Velasquez.
It just kind of, Velasquez, yeah. So, I mean, it just kind of seems like maybe people saw through that. It just kind of seems odd, especially in UFC, which is half an entertainment industry. I mean, you have to sell yourself,
yeah.
In the UFC. So, and he wasn't really good at that either. It just kind of seemed like he was there to fight, sometimes.
Well, I think he was always in trouble too because, that was a big part of not being able to self-promote because you can't really promote yourself while you got a court case going on or, something crazy is always happening. Because, he was always in the news. Like, every time you turned around, whether it was just some dumb interaction with a cop where he's getting pulled over and telling the cop that he's a jackass or something, or just, do you know who I am? Like, that's who Jon Jones is the do you know who I am kind of guy. Yes, we know who you are, man.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and it just kind of seems like maybe people did, but it's hard to say people didn't like that because there's people that are like that are, horrendously famous. So, it had to be something that didn't click with people. And it's not like he was a super clickable guy. I feel like he was kind of, a pale, it just kind of seems like he was very one-dimensional in his characters of life. It just kind of seemed like he always had the same answer, didn't really have any interest in talking, so it just, I get it. I just feel like maybe that was the whole point of it. But on the flip side of that, I think people will say, well, Wasn't Brock Lesnar the same guy? Didn't really talk, hated talking, went out, punched people in the face, and left. What do you think the draw for Lesnar was then?
The controversy with Lesnar was never there until after his like real fighting career was over. Because and I think this is why, because we all kind of knew, right, that he at some point had partaken, does partake in the juice. I think we all like kind of knew that. There was, of course, that ESPN interview he did where they asked him about it, and he immediately got up and walked out while he was on his run, and that was great, right? That was entertainment. So I think Lesnar knows how to be entertaining. Jon Jones doesn't. Brock Lesnar's a professional wrestler. Yeah, he knows how to cut a promo, and Jon Jones does not. I think the difference between the two, where Lesnar knows how to work you in wrestling terms, right? Lesnar knows how to put on a work. Jon Jones is just Jon Jones. He's just been a normal athlete his whole life, whereas Brock was, he had the flares of maybe like a Chael or a Conor McGregor before that, just not to the same level. I mean, even in pro wrestling, it's not like Brock is the greatest talker of all time, but I mean, after he beats Frank Mir, and not all MMA fans like this, obviously he got booed in the building, but when he said, what did he say? He said Frank Mir had a horseshoe stuck up his ass, and I pulled that sumbitch out and I beat him over the head with it. Like, what? It's just like, it's entertaining. Yeah. Whether you like it or not, it's entertaining. Or even Floyd. Yeah. A lot of people, like most people with Floyd Mayweather, paid to see him get beat because they couldn't stand him. And I was one of those people until I watched one of those Showtime 24s where it just showed how hard he worked. And I was like, okay, I get why he talks the way he does. I would too if I worked like that and was a world champ. But, so many people paid to see him get beat, whereas Jon Jones, I think, exists in this middle realm where nobody really, like, the people that aren't huge fans of him don't care if he wins or loses. And if you don't like Jon, you don't care to watch him lose because you just don't care about him enough, I think, is really what it is. Just not an entertainer. A man is a fighter, and I think by the end of his career, or the middle to end of his career, after all the real trouble started, he was a very boring fighter after that. So, talking about boring, I have to ask you this, because at this point, I don't think I'm willing to ever put Jon Jones in a GOAT discussion again. Sounds a little crazy. But this man turned down $30 million to fight Tom Aspinall. After talking about fighter pay and my pay, I guess it was never about fighter pay, but it was about my pay. I'm not getting paid enough. I need X amount to fight Francis. Ran away from that long enough that Francis is gone. I need X amount to fight Tom Aspinall. This fight doesn't entertain me. Retires, relinquishes the belt, and then all of a sudden we turn around, we're going to have a White House card. Oh, I got to be on that card. I want to fight Tom Aspinall on that card. Oh, now you want to fight Tom Aspinall. But they offered you $30 million to fight Tom Aspinall, and you said, I'm living my best life in Thailand, and I'm retired, and I just, bro, if you can't knuckle up and fight, what are you,
I see your point. I mean, I feel like a lot of people, that might be the last straw for some, especially it seems like it was the last straw for you. It just kind of seems like if you're going to get offered $30 million and you're complaining about not making enough money, well,
that was his demands. He didn't think the UFC would meet his demands, and they did. And then he said, forget that. I'm not doing it. I didn't want to do it. I didn't think you'd meet my demands. Now I'm going to run away with the belt. So you've hit like everything that you need to hit to just be a shamed fighter in my book. You tested positive for steroids. Your testosterone was off for the first Cormier fight. We know what that means. That means you were on steroids. You run away from building up the next generation. Jon Jones took away from the fans as much as he gave. I think at the end, he absolutely destroyed the heavyweight division, and then not fighting Tom Aspinall, you're not, I'm going to go wrestling terms again, but you're not giving the next guy the rub, and that just is not right,
Mm. Giving him the old Triple H golden shovel.
That's exactly what happened.
That's fair, and I think that's what a lot of people, maybe, and especially me, I haven't thought about it that way. It just kind of seems like he kind of buried the division before he left. And not taking the $30 million that he asked for. It just kind of seems pointless, and I think he can beat Tom Aspinall.
I think
And
he
I
probably
don't think
could
he
too.
can't. So
Yeah.
I don't really see the problem in it. But and I think that's tough. I think that's tough in today's world when you talk about marketing yourself, because I mean that's the name of the game in anything. I mean, you have to market yourself to work at Price Chopper down the street.
Yeah.
It just kind of seems like you're marketing yourself for anything these days, and especially when you're dealing with $30 million. Um, it just kind of seems like the name of the game is okay. Well, it's about me. Well, it is, but you're also letting a company down, you're letting fans down, and you're letting the other guy down. You're robbing Aspinall of a huge payday from his own.
Yeah.
So it is kind of shitty um, in terms of that. So I mean, do I think he deserves to be knocked out of the GOAT conversation? No. I mean, the guy never really lost. He was boring at the end of the year or his career, but I think a lot of people felt like GSP kind of got boring at the end of his career, and I think BJ Penn kind of got slower at the end of his career. Obviously, he fought a long
I don't
time,
want to
but
talk about the end of
you
his
know,
career.
Randy Couture got slow at the end of his career. I think it just kind of happens when fighters get older,
Yeah.
and they're going to get boring and slow. So, does he deserve to be taken off the list? I don't think so, but I think it's more of a enlightened view of him, especially with everything that's happened recently. Um, that's tough. It's tough for fans because I think a lot of people want to see him fight one more time. Um, maybe not as many as you just pointed out, but it just kind of seems that's where we're headed. If it's not for me, then it's not for any of you. As John
Yeah.
Cena put in his latest promo, you get nothing.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, I know some people care about this less than we do, but we'll wrap it up after this. How do you feel about? Because there's been a lot of controversy. TKO and WWE joining forces a year or two ago. Um, the ticket prices for WWE have skyrocketed, especially at pay-per-views. I believe 3 years ago, a WrestleMania ticket was about $60 for an OK seat. Now they're about $500 a piece. So, obviously wrestling has taken a very skyward turn, but how do you feel that corporate greed has kind of wrestled, no pun intended, wrestled with WWE? And also, how much of that is on Levesque and how much of that is with TKO? Who's really pulling the strings of, pricing, who's going to be the star, who's going to be, because that's kind of a debate right now in the wrestling world is who's really making the stars here? Is it Triple H? Is it Paul Levesque? Is it Paul Heyman? Is it, all these guys? Or is it the guys sitting at the desk at TKO that don't know as much about wrestling as they do?
I think it's 100% TKO. The UFC sees the exact same thing. The UFC was here in Kansas City not long ago. I want to say April, somewhere around in there. I was going to go, try to get a ticket. Cheapest ticket, like $260 to a fight night. It wasn't even a pay-per-view card. It was just to a fight night. So I think it's a TKO thing. I do think that TKO is probably a little hands-off ish when it comes to I don't know, the star making ability that you talking about is a dual headed thing where I think that I think what Vince had as a mentality after getting burned by Brock, The Rock, all of the, even John Cena to a point where you get these guys that become Batista that end up becoming bigger than wrestling and can go the Hollywood route, that they would take that. Therefore, I feel like for a long time WWE tried to make sure and limit the star power with their stars. Obviously, they still wanted to create stars, but don't shine too bright because Hollywood will take you away, and we don't want that. So I think maybe there's that same mentality now. Maybe not. I mean, maybe TKO doesn't care. Like, let's just figure out the next guy. But as to who, I don't know. I think TKO to a point is pulling a little bit of strings just because of, whomever we may see. We saw The Rock come back for nothing, basically, other than ratings. It all comes down to the ratings. And that's the corporate greed you talked about, right? The fact that everything is licensed. I mean, they pull out a table and it has a huge Slim Jim logo on it. What are we doing? Like, nothing is sacred here. Yeah. The ring has a different logo on it every year, or every event. I don't know, man. I think it's just a lot of corporate greed.
Yeah, Slim Jim, Sprite. Prime, whatever you want to do. It just kind of seems like, because obviously Netflix has the Unreal series on for WWE, which is a fun series if you want to give that a watch. But it just kind of seems to really be shining a light on the hypocrisy of sports businesses in general. Because I think you even told me, because I texted you before the Wild SummerSlam. If you catch that live on TikTok, thank you for watching that. That was a lot of fun to do. But that was just night one. Night two was even more exciting. Crazy. But, the rumor is that Brock Lesnar was coming back. But you even said that he was on TKO's banned list. And guess who shows up at SummerSlam? Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
So, it's... I guess this will be the last question. We'll leave it on a cliffhanger, but are sports organizations heading to a point of no return of corporate greed? Are we just at that point to where there's no looking back? It's either all about money or there's really no point of putting on a game. So, if you look at the NFL and you look at the schedules, 10 years ago, 3 games on opening weekend, or 3 games before Sunday on opening weekend, would have been
insane,
sacrilegious. Right. Would have been ridiculous. But now we have 3 or 4 games before we even get into Sunday. Mm-hmm. So are we heading to a point to where if it's not $10 million on the table, we're not playing?
Yeah, look at baseball.
And not just in one sport, but any sport. Yeah.
I was about to say, look at baseball and the way that they've structured teams where team salaries are going down. That's insane. The players' union in that situation should be like, what is going on? Because every team's payroll, or 70% of the league's payroll, shouldn't be less this year than what it was last year. That's insane. And I don't know about the other sports. I mean, we hit kind of like the main things we were talking about, but yeah, like you said, pricing, fans out, whether it's WWE, the UFC, even the NFL. I mean, to be 100% honest, I probably wouldn't go to any games if I didn't have season tickets. Paying for season tickets pays off in the end, because when you look at some of these single game tickets, they're $200-$300, even more sometimes. And it's like, damn, I got to pay, $200-$300 to go to one game. I mean, I'll just watch at home. I'm okay. I'm good. Not to mention the subscription packages. And, I think they've done the math over the last couple of years, and you see it every year before the season starts. Is like, if you were to pay for everything, every game in the NFL, you're looking at, I think, more than what I pay for season tickets, like around the $1,000 to $1,500 range. And it's like, I just want to watch football, man. Like what? Even this is a little bit of a tidbit too on the season ticket member side. So starting, it may have been 2 years ago, but they used to give out NFL Premium for free with season tickets. They just send you a code. Hey, you have NFL Premium all year. 2 years ago, they changed it to 40% off, which equals $60. So now it's $60, or no, I think it was $40 at first, and now it's $60. So $60 for NFL Plus Premium as a season ticket member, whereas just like maybe 3 years ago, I got it for the whole year for free. How much money is enough money? You know, like
I don't know. Here's a question to think about, because we've been talking forever about a bunch of different
we're 90
stuff.
minutes in there, brother.
But a fun thing for people to think about, and they can comment on us. You can comment on Papa Schro's YouTube channel page.
Right there.
Let him know, and we'll talk about it as we've talked for an hour and a half. But a hanger question is, I don't know. I just thought about something that we could talk about forever, but we'll do it real quick. But Dan Orlovsky's list. Did you see it? Did you see Dan Orlovsky's list?
No.
Okay. Well, all right. Go look at it.
Okay.
Go look at Dan Orlovsky's list, and then we will talk about it next week, because we'll talk about that for an hour and a half. Because it'll be the most ridiculous list you've ever seen. And for the people below that have watched this, that have listened to us for this long, first of all, thank you. Second,
yes, thank you.
Second, comment on which list you thought was the most ridiculous. All of them are just stupid as hell, but which one did you find the most offensive? All 7 of them are dumb, but there's some that are worse than others. We'll let Papa Schro look at them, and then we'll dive into them next time.
You got it. Well, what's our cliffhanger that we're hanging them on?
Well, they gotta do some work. They gotta figure out which list was the worst.
I'm with it.
They gotta figure out which list was the worst, and then they gotta comment on which one they felt was the worst, and which list did they feel was the most accurate.
So,
which was none of them. But
let's see in the comments below who had the worst list, which one was the best or your favorite, and what do you think Papa Schro's take on this will be, of like who had the worst list, in my opinion, come hopefully Monday. We'll get it figured out. But hey, it's been amazing. We sat here for an hour and a half. It feels like every time that we get on the pod, we end up talking for an hour and a half. I don't think that we can.
Well, that's how it's always been, and yeah, that's how it's always been, and it's always enjoyable. Good to talk to you again, buddy.
Awesome, I appreciate it. Smash that subscribe button for me if you are still here, because you've listened to me for an hour and a half. Obviously, you like listening to me and EDJ. Make sure you stay notified. Hit that bell. On the road to 500 subscribers. We are almost there. We're going to hit that before the NFL season starts. And until next time, Papa Schro for EDJ. We'll see you.